We see a very big lack of community in general, and there is this thing called the epidemic of loneliness in general. And we find that the B Corp community is a shelter for that in many ways for people, because there's nothing stronger for people to connect in community over than values.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Community Leaders Podcast, where we chat with community experts, uncovering insights and leaving you with practical takeaways. Today we're joined by Silvia Laserna, who is the Associate Director of Community and Innovation at B Lab US and Canada. She leads engagement strategies for over 2,500 B corporations. At B Lab, Silvia integrates community building with innovation, aiming to transform the global economy to benefit all, community and the planet. I can't wait to chat to Silvia about all things community. Let's get started. We are Steadfast Collective. We exist to craft digital applications that bring people together. A team of smart creatives, we are excited by technology, and we always aim to leave the internet in a better place than we found it. Working with many of the UK's leading communities, we use technology as an accelerator to help them grow and engage their members. Our applications resource membership organisations, grow businesses, and create value. We know what it takes to ship, market, and scale applications, and we apply this wealth of background knowledge to everything we do. We're not just another agency. We are community builders. Hello, it's great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Hi, Pete. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Perfect. It is great to see you. And I saw you just a couple of weeks ago at CMX, which was good to catch up. It was actually the first place we met last year, and then we saw each other again this year. So it was great to meet you again in person.
Yeah, same.
It was good. Did you enjoy the conference?
I did enjoy the conference. It's always surprising to see how new people come in, new companies, new ideas, new technologies. So it's always exciting to be there.
Likewise, I thought that the event was great this year. I enjoyed lots of the panels and the talks, and the highlight for CMX for me is always the corridor conversations, meeting people outside or in the restaurants and the cafes and stuff. So yeah, it was good vibes this year, and the weather was nice.
Yes, indeed.
It's California, the weather's always nice, right?
It can be foggy around the Bay Area, but we were lucky to have lots of sunshine.
So you work at B Lab, and I would love to hear more about what B Lab is and what you do at B Lab.
So B Lab is a nonprofit that certifies for-profit businesses in sustainability and social impact. So companies that are doing great work with their workers, with the environment, with the community, with their governance structure, they come to us and they show us everything that they're doing. We verify their claims and we give them a score based on our certification criteria. And if the score surpasses the 80-point mark, then these companies become certified as what we know as B Corps. The standards for certification are currently changing. So the model I just described will be different, but that is how it's operating today. And we have 2,500 companies in the region where I work, which is the US and Canada. But globally, we have up to 10,000 companies, which is really a huge amount of people who are part of our community, and we're so grateful. I work at B Lab US in Canada on the community team. So our mission as a team is actually to build a community of companies that share best practices and they share their values and they act together, because we know that acting together is stronger than them trying to achieve things on their own. So I've been here 6.5 years. I've changed my role many times, and I am still excited to be doing the work that I'm doing.
We had this conversation when we met in person. We recently got our B Corp certification. So we were certificated at the start of the year. So we've been through the process, but the process and the certification is not just for smaller businesses like ourselves. There's some huge companies, Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, Finisterre, Can you name any other famous B Corps off the top of your head?
Sure. There's Danone, I believe, is our biggest B Corp. We also have, for example, Natura, which is a Brazilian beauty company that is also well known. Our most famous one, as you mentioned, is obviously Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's. Athleta is another popular one.
Hmm.
Yeah, but like I said, there are 10,000 companies. So depending on your area of interest, I'm sure you will find companies that are certified in almost every industry.
It's one of those things that when you learn about the B Corp certification and then you recognize the logo, you start to see it on packaging and branding everywhere. And you start kind of clocking who's a B Corp. And for us, one of the reasons we decided to go on the journey was we felt that we were already doing a lot of the things that kind of marked us as ready to be a B Corp, ready to be certified. It was a case of just documenting lots of things. And when we went through the process, actually, not only are we really proud to have achieved B Corp status, but the actual process of going through it made us question certain parts of our policies and whatnot, which is actually really healthy for us to do that kind of inward looking. And I would encourage that even if you're not looking to become a B Corp, going on the journey of looking at the questions you would be asked is a really healthy practice, just to check that as a business, your intentions and your documentations and your policies and how we treat workers and your social and environmental impact are all going in a good direction.
Yes, that is correct, Pete. So we actually have hundreds of thousands of companies using the B Impact Assessment as an impact measuring tool. And we encourage that. It's free. You can open an account and just use it to track how you're doing compared to companies that are actually certified. And you don't have to certify. Obviously, we want to build this community and we encourage that. But it is more important for us that companies are actually getting better with their impact than the fact that they go through with certification.
In terms of B Lab and your mission, how does that integrate to kind of the community building side that you're doing?
So, like I mentioned, we believe that these companies acting together are going to be a lot stronger than companies acting individually. So there is part of it that is trading best practices. So there is a lot of innovation happening in the business space regarding sustainability and social impact. And some companies are trying to figure out how to be better, and other companies have figured out how to be better in some ways. So the idea for us is that there is a community of practice where people can share those best practices and everybody can improve faster. Also, just in terms of policy, trying to pass policies that will enable businesses to be better in the business environment and not just maximize profits, but maximize benefits for all the stakeholders involved. So there are real gains to having a community. And just to be clear, we talk about communities of companies and communities of practice and like business community, but in reality, community is built by people. So it's important to remember that there are always people behind what we see in these businesses, and people make decisions, and it's about bringing the people together around these values and around the motivation to join the B Corp community that is really important to us. And a lot of people are actually in the community because they were looking to find values aligned people to be in community with. And we see that that is actually the biggest retention point, is that the people who have been a part of this community want to remain a part of this community, more so than the businesses, I would say.
I remember when we were going through the journey, we came across a few exciting case studies where businesses had collaborated. And one of them was, there was a brand, I've forgotten who it was, but they designed this really interesting packing material made of cardboard, but it was designed that it could keep safe like really heavy objects. And then they shared that round with other B Corps who could make the most of that. And I know there's groups within the kind of the community. For instance, there's like the beauty B Corp community. I've forgotten what.
Be beauty.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And there's different groups. So when I was at the B Corp conference in Oxford last year, there was various kind of sector groups that were meeting up to swap ideas and share, whether it was not a new packing material or whether it was a new, manufacturing system or whatever it was. But kind of wonderful to see people just sharing their knowledge to ultimately kind of push the industry in a better direction. And yeah, it's a lovely kind of thing to see.
Yeah, 100%. In the US and Canada, we call these networks. And
Okay.
what we see is that networks are forming around people's identities. So, for example, Be Proud is a LGBTQIA network, or the BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. We also have networks forming around industry, like you mentioned, Be Beauty or Be Tourism. And we also have networks forming around people's roles. So, for example, the people in marketing or the people in HR or like that. So, yeah, we have networks forming at all levels for all different reasons.
What's kind of the biggest difficulties or challenges you're currently facing while building out the community that you are?
I would say some of the biggest challenges are the fact that people come for different reasons. There are different motivations to be part of the B Corp community. There are people who are here to learn best practices. There are people who are here to do business with each other. And those are very different purposes. And I would say that everybody probably has both, but to different degrees. And it's a challenge when people come with a business first mindset to a community of impact driven businesses. So, normally businesses are thinking about maximizing their profits on a regular basis, even within the B Corp community, which is a mission driven community. So, trying to change that mindset has been a little bit of a challenge. For example, B Corps love having a score and comparing how well they did to each other in terms of impact, which is not really what we're trying to promote. We're trying to promote that we're all together in this journey and we're all going to help each other to get better. But in such a capitalist world that we live in, it's really difficult to ask businesses to like get out of that mentality. And I think we have to a certain extent, but it feels like a very big lift. Uh, uh, Another thing that is tricky, as I mentioned, this is a community of businesses, but in reality, there are people. And there's a lot of turnover inside of companies. So when we're trying to build a community through the companies and the people keep changing, then it's not a steady process of building this community. There's a lot of like back and forth of like, oh, suddenly we don't know the people at this company anymore, and we have to start from scratch building that relationship. So it's like a very high rotating community of people, I would say.
That's an interesting one because I would imagine, as someone who's been through the certification process, it is a bit of a journey and it does require quite a lot of your time. So if the person who undertook that or the team that undertook that then moved on, having that continuity within the company must be quite important. So it would be interesting to know from other B Corps how they're ensuring that the whole team understands the mission of B Corp, not just the team that undertook the certification process. Because obviously they're kind of in the weeds of it, but actually ultimately someone one day else will need to take on the reins of recertifying, etc.
Yeah, another thing that is tricky is the difference in size of the companies, right?
Yes.
We have companies that are 1 or 3 people or 5 people, and we have companies that are 3,000 people. So when we say, yes, all the teams should understand it's okay when we're talking about 50 people, but when we're talking about 3,000, it's a different thing. So when we try to make assets for these companies or like try to design programs, it's tricky to try to serve everybody's needs. And it shows in that way, right?
In terms of you're often engaging, am I right in saying you're often engaging with business owners in your community, like founders?
I would say originally in the B Corp movement, that was the case because of the sizes of the companies that were. So when you have like, like a 50-person size, it's common to have the CEO be involved or the founder be involved. I think as we grew as a community and we had bigger companies, it's not necessarily the CEO or the founder who is involved anymore. And that poses a different set of challenges. Like, who do you need buy-in from?
Okay.
Because there are also cases in which you do actually engage only with the founder of the CEO, and then nobody else at the company knows why they're doing this. And it's hard to get them to do the work to certify if they don't understand the why behind.
In terms of the folk you're engaging, whether it's the founder or whether it's a team that's being kind of dedicated towards the process, etc. Everybody is so busy and there's so many things on their to-do list. What sort of things have you put in place? Obviously, there's the certification side of things, but then there's the community as a whole to ensure people are valuing what you're doing. What are you doing to draw people in, even though they've got busy schedules?
I think the human connection is actually what draws people in. Like I mentioned before, there are many people who are part of this community because they personally feel connected to the other humans in this community, beyond the business connections, beyond the certification itself. So there are people who come to the community to just ask questions about certification or questions to improve their impact. But we've seen a lot of personal relationships being built over time. And I do think that is what draws people to come. At least in the US and Canada, we see a very big lack of community in general. And there is this thing called the epidemic of loneliness in general. And we find that the B Corp community is a shelter for that in many ways for people, because there's nothing stronger for people to connect in community over than values. And we attract people that have very similar views of life and values. So when they come together, there's magic that happens, and then they feel connected. They feel like they belong. They feel like they're a part of this community. And I think that's what helps some people connect beyond the work.
On that loneliness kind of thing, we in the UK, as far as I'm aware, we don't have a centralized place for open roles in active B Corps. Do you have something in the US where there's like a job listings of all of the companies who are B Corps who are currently advertising roles?
We did until recently. We wound it down. There were some challenges that I'm happy to discuss if you're interested. But there was a B Corp that voluntarily built a job board for us, and B Corps were listing jobs on it. It was actually available worldwide, so it was also available to the UK. But there are several reasons why it didn't thrive. So we decided to take it down for now, and hoping to rebuild something better in the future.
In terms of what success looks like to like B Lab from your role, like what does success look like for B Lab?
For B Lab or for my role?
I guess for your role, like what metrics and what things are you saying which makes you look great to your bosses?
I will say that I am lucky enough that I don't feel I work in an environment where I have to prove myself on a regular basis. But when I talk about the community that I manage, I say that our mission is to inspire, connect, and inform the members of our community. And that is what I think success looks like for me, is making sure that the community is inspired to remain certified and remain part of this community, that they feel informed and they have all the tools that they need in order to certify, recertify, and stay within the community, and that they feel connected to each other. And that they know how to get in touch with us and how to get in touch with each other. So metrics have been a challenge, particularly because of our CRM infrastructure and how we handle measuring actual interactions between people. One of the easiest ways that we can do this is with the online community. So we just look at like activity and engagement on the online community. But in terms of engagement beyond that, it's been a little bit trickier. I think we're getting to a place where we can actually just track who has engaged with what materials or which events, and try to assign an engagement score to different users and different companies, and you sort of keep an eye on them. But we are not at the point where we are measuring our individual performance as workers based on those metrics.
And you mentioned at the top of the conversation that you are currently going through a fairly big change in how certification works. So we were on the previous certification process, and I'm aware the new one is live or rolling out very soon. How did you work with the community to engage what these changes were going to be, to inform them, so it wasn't like you were just releasing a grenade and hoping somebody would catch it?
So, yes, like you mentioned, there is a very big change in the standards from what I described at the beginning of the interview to the new set of standards. We have 7 different impact topics as opposed to 5 that we used to have in the past, plus foundational requirements. And they're quite different. We have human rights, we have fair work, we have justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, we have purpose and stakeholder governance, and so on. so it's different. It's like the requirements are quite different to what we used to have. And this is really scary for the community. So it's been a little bit of a rough process because the team creating the standards is also like doing this. I mean, not creating the standards for the first time, but creating a set of standards that have not existed before. And it was a very inclusive process to create those standards. There are experts engaged all over the world. There are companies engaged all over the world. It was a very multi-stakeholder process. So it's been a ride for everybody in terms of uncertainty and things changing constantly. In terms of my role, I am in charge of upskilling the community in the US and Canada, which means that I am in charge of teaching them what the new standards are and how to engage with them, which is not a small feat. And what we did was create a series of events starting in March of this year. We launched, it's called the Impact Collab series. So we used to have a different event that was called the Let's Collab series, which was about collaborating for marketing campaigns. This is similar, but it's based on impact. And the idea is that we bring experts to talk about the impact topics, and then we allow time for companies to connect. That is the collab part of the session. So they're all structured in the same way. And each month they're focusing on a different impact topic. So in April, we focused on climate action because it was Earth Month. Then in May, we're going to do government and, oh my God, Gaka, what does this stand? Collective action. Government affairs and collective action. And in June, we're going to do justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and so on. So at the same time as we're having these events, there are online courses that are being released for each topic. So the idea is that we give people the information in many different ways and give them different levels of engagement depending on their time availability and whether they're interested in coming and connecting with other people or not. But we're hoping that they do. In terms of the community platform, we try to integrate it into all the other activities that we do. So, for example, we are collecting questions on the community platform before we hold the events to answer those questions live during the event. And then after the event, we have a dedicated group in the online community that is specific to that impact topic so that companies and people can still come and ask questions there and the conversation can continue. So the idea is that everything is woven together in different ways and making sure that we cater to everybody's needs.
Yeah, I can't believe how complex it must have been for the certification team, because for those who don't know, this is the questions and the program you kind of go through is for, correct me if I'm wrong here, is for everyone from a 3-person service team all the way through to a 100,000 person product manufacturing team. It's the same set of questions, and also what we have in the UK and what you have in the US, the questions mean slightly different things. For instance, we have the NHS. So our questions around healthcare are probably slightly different, or the points need to be weighted slightly differently to what you have in the US, as they probably do in Asia, and so on and so on. It must be an absolute nightmare to make sure it's completely fair worldwide, while making sure the questions even make sense in that region, because something like healthcare, for instance, is so different in every region on how an employer would administer that to their employees.
Yeah, you're right. That is incredibly complex. The only clarification is that actually the questions are not necessarily the same for everyone. They should not. So they vary depending on the size of your company, your industry, and your location.
Yes, and the track. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So the smallest companies will only have something like 25 sub requirements, whereas a large company can have like 250. Right. So the idea is that there's a higher level of complexity for the larger companies than for the small companies.
We heard a lot about it at CMX. We were both there together. We both sat through the talks. We heard a lot of folk talking about AI in their workflows and whatnot. Have you had a chance to integrate AI at a low level, maybe like ChatGPT, or anything as a more complex level into your workflow?
We do use ChatGPT, some people more than others. I think for me, it has been really key to build consistency and to actually like just boost my production. I make some of our online courses, and I've done a lot of the work of analyzing the new standards to put them into the events that we're making and some of the materials that we're making. And ChatGPT has been really key in helping me keep a consistent voice, keep it short and clear, distill like the complexity of the standards into bite-sized pieces that people can actually grasp and feel like they understand what's going on. So it has been very important in that sense. In terms of CMX, what was surprising to me is that there are a lot of tools out there to build community with AI, which is not something that we had thought of, because we think the human component is so important to building community. However, I do think that there are things that could be achieved with AI that would be of service to free our time to then do the more human side of things. So, as an example, and is for example, companies have asked us to do like very personalized introductions between them. And it's really hard for us to grasp just off the top of our head what 10,000 companies want and what they're good at and how to make these introductions, right? So far, our solution had been here's the online community, find each other, do your thing. And they're like, no, no, no. We want you to tell us who to reach out to. Right. And I don't think that's ever something we were going to be able to do as a team for everyone. And at CMX, I found this company that's called intros.ai, and I have still to like understand the details of what they do. But if we could use AI to do some matchmaking between our companies, depending on their strengths, areas of expertise and interest, I think it would go a really long way. Um, and that's just one example of like many ways that I think AI could be used to like really boost the community in a way that the humans who are working here right now could probably not achieve.
So I was chatting to somebody today, actually this afternoon, about Intros AI. I went for tea with them. I went for a drink with them. They held like a drink.
Uh-huh.
It was fun to get to know them. They're a lovely team, and we used that. I was part of the at CMX, it was used. I met a few people through it. It was helpful. So essentially you answered maybe like 5 questions, maybe what you're interested in, what sort of business you run, and automatically pairs you. And I can see how if you were running a large scale conference or an event or something like what you are running, where you're right, that manual matchmaking would be an absolute nightmare and it wouldn't be great really, but you can do some automated matchmaking, and it won't get it perfect every time. But it's a start, at least it's a conversation starter of putting 2 people together. One of the other examples I heard on stage, which really sparked something for me, was I think it was during the AI panel. Someone mentioned that when somebody asks a question in their forum, if the AI has a very high indication it knows the answer, it will pop up and say, oh, I know how to reset your password. You don't need to ask the community how to do this. I'm very sure I know how you do this. And if it's not sure, it just carries on and lets, introduces the human element, goes back to the traditional way. But I like that. There are questions like, how do I reset my password? Or, what does the B in B Lab stand for? Like, that question doesn't need a human to answer. That's something you could just Google, let's be honest.
Yes, that is true. And it is a challenge that would be great for us to solve in that way, because we have very capable people on our team that are spending a lot of time doing these things. And to be able to, in a way, liberate them from answering the questions that don't need to be answered by a human would be a huge achievement, and just allow us to do so much more in terms of impact and human connection and community building.
Thank you so much for your time today. I'm delighted we managed to make this work, and we found time to chat on the podcast, but also we got to meet at CMX and speak then. And yeah, a massive thank you for everything you do at B Lab. And as someone who's been through the process, a massive thank you to your team too. I know that there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make, our process seamless as somebody who's been through it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Pete. I'm so glad you certified as a B Corp. We're excited to have you in the community, and thank you for inviting me.
We'll be back in a few years to recertify. So yeah.
Okay, great.
Perfect. If somebody wanted to find out more about B Lab or the B Corp certification, the best place to go would be the B Lab website, correct?
bcorporation.net. And I think there are specific websites for the UK, and there is one for the US and Canada. So wherever you are in the world, just check your regional website as well.
Thank you again for your time, and speak again soon. This is the Digital Community Leaders Survey 2023. And this is the Digital Community Leaders Survey 2023 second edition. Back in 2023, we released a beautiful printed book. And due to its popularity, we sold out of printed copies. Rather than reprinting, we listened to your feedback and we included 40% more content in this copy. We created the report to be a data-backed handbook for building the foundations of your brand's community. For instance, did you know that 70% of communities we surveyed saw growth over the last 12 months? And we know those businesses are growing too. Other metrics we dive into include community growth, biggest pain points, community purpose, what are other community managers measuring, funding, participation, C-suite involvement, and much, much, much more. In this book, we present the data and expert insights from Richard Gott, Michelle Goodall, Vincent Boone, Keen Bakatari, Rosie Sherry, Matt Sullivan, Laura Roth, Nicole Saunders, Blaise Grimes-Vaught, and Jan Carlisle. We've also included frameworks such as the community archetypes, ecosystem of impact, community participation ladder, and the community first culture nexus. There's so much in here, I can't wait for you to get your hands on this new edition. You can order your printed copy from Amazon today, or download a digital copy for free at digitalcommunityleaders.com.